All right, well, let's talk a bit more about some time travel ideas, because we brought our list of our favorite time travel movies. We each got a top five. Before we get into it, are we saying Synchronic is ineligible for this list since you were a co-editor on it? Should we say this is inspired, or you got Synchronic on there?
I'll say this. You guys vote however you vote. I don't tend to vote on anything I've worked on. So I kind of like leave that out because it's hard when you're like, oh yeah, I've seen like this 48-hour version of the movie. I've seen all like I've talked to these people. So it's kind of harder to switch my brain off from that. But if you guys want to vote for like, is it like, do we each have our own top five or is it a communal top five?
I think we can each do our, see where our tastes overlap and where they diverge, but we'll give an honorable mention shout out to Synchronic because we definitely give that one a strong recommendation out of TIFF when we saw that a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, no, Synchronic is one of my. I love that movie to death. I was on set for that movie, and all the cast and crew were great. Anthony and Jamie were wonderful. So I'm so glad people have latched on and enjoyed that movie for sure.
And shout out Endless too, because I think that's the one for me for sure. That's the one that started.
I was also on set for Endless. I had a cameo that got cut. That's fun, but it's probably somewhere on a Blu-ray. I try to act in all of their movies too. I'm in Something the Dirt as myself. I was one of the cultists or one of the commune people in, like, I was talking with the just by a campfire. It was such a small scene in the Endless. That's why it was kind of cut out. I'm just talking with Shane Brady, the guy who does the magic tricks with the baseball being thrown in the air and then it disappears. It's very much like you wouldn't notice it was gone. It was such a small thing. But I wasn't cut out of Something in the Dirt. That's actually still in there, and too much of me trying to cut myself out.
That's funny.
All right, Art, you want to kick us off with your number five?
For sure. Zach loves when I do these. It is a tie for me. Two time travel type movies that deal kind of in the action space. It would be Edge of Tomorrow and Source Code. I believe Source Code is more so like a parallel world that's kind of happening, but I think both of these are vehicles that kind of show you the thrilling nature of that Groundhog Day-esque mentality where you're having to achieve a purpose that you don't even know what it is, what's going to end this cycle. It's two movies that I've been looking forward to for a sequel as well that have kind of been hinted at. And I also love how they kind of have different variations that they've lived in. Some people know it as Edge of Tomorrow. Some people know it as Live, Die, Repeat. Some people know it as the Kill title, which I think is what they should have kept it as. And then Source Code, I think, it wasn't, I think Moon preceded this for...
I think this was Duncan Jones' follow-up to that one.
Follow-up to it. But I love Jake Gyllenhaal, and I think he's fantastic in this movie. So Edge of Tomorrow and Source Code would be my initial picks for number 5.
Yeah, I'm glad you put both of those. I was considering both of those for my number 5 slot, but you got us covered. I was debating before when I was assembling this list, like, is there a difference between the time travel movie and the time loop movie? Because there is kind of a distinction there, but...
We got a professional.
We do have, it's one of those things the Felker family talks about when we watch time travel movies is what type of time travel movie are we going to put the criteria in? So I would count, because there is a element of you are traveling through time, even though it's the same loop over and over again, it's still a track that you're going. So I would count it in this overall grand scheme of time travel.
Minority Report. Because the travel isn't there, right? But the time element kind of is.
That is interesting because I think I wouldn't call it a time travel movie just because even though they are trying to stop like a future or something from happening, I would say there's still like they're still reacting to a premonition, like they're reacting to something, and the world in which they're acting in is still a world of linear like time travel progression, and they're just trying to stop something that may or may not happen. Gotcha. So I wouldn't count it, but I would love to hear the argument for Minority Report.
It's certainly playing it with some of those elements, but I think it lacks the travel aspect of time travel, right?
So my last one, Professor. Interstellar.
Interstellar, I would call, at least it has time travel elements because of the way the different bodies that they... the planetary bodies that they land on have time manipulation in them.
Time dilation.
Right.
Yeah. So by the time they do visit that ocean planet, come back, and time has traveled in a different way I would call it a time travel movie, and I would call it a time travel movie based off how that movie ends as well. So even though it doesn't behave 100% like that's the main engine, it has enough like elements that factor the plot that I would say it's a time travel movie.
Perfect.
Nice. Good to qualify. My number 5, I'm going to go with 12 Monkeys, the classic Terry Gilliam sci-fi world. I mean, Terry has this really incredible way of just envisioning the films that he's making, particularly these like visions of future dystopias that are so like cold, metallic, but like there's like a twisted humor in all of it too, that is so intriguing. I just remember seeing this movie probably a bit too young and it blowing my mind and scaring me in a lot of different ways. The performances from Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt are so excellent in this. Yeah, it's a movie that just, I think, gets at some of the interesting ideas of like fatalistic elements that blend with time travel stories, and obviously takes a lot of that from La Jetée, which it was inspired by. But a movie that really holds up, very entertaining film. I think they tried remaking this into like a miniseries at some point in the last
the sci-fi
decade.
one, yeah, Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah. But I don't know if I saw that, but I still stand by the original movie, 12 Monkeys.
Yeah. I by the way, I want to say, yeah, I had Edge of Tomorrow on my honorable mentions.
Nice.
Especially because I read like All You Need Is Kill like way back, and I was like, I can't believe they're gonna make this, and or I hope they make this, and then to see it then still work is like a fun action Tom Cruise vehicle is incredibly awesome. So I'm glad that was mentioned. I didn't put Source Code, but I also just forgot about Source Code, and I think that's a really good choice as well. And then 12 Monkeys almost made my top 5, and that's an honorable mention as well. 12 Monkeys is a huge, I grew up in a Terry Gilliam household, and so we love whatever that's in that guy's brain, and being a Mighty Python fan as well. So 12 Monkeys is definitely a Paramount time travel movie in the cinematic canon for sure.
For sure. All right, we heard a couple of your honorable mentions, but what actually made the top 5, Felker?
So just because I have referenced it already and I have to put it in my top 5 just because it was such a huge inspiration for a lot of me writing a lot of time travel movies in general, I would have number 5 as Looper.
Nice.
Just because there's so many great ideas that they do that I'd never seen in a time travel movie, and that's what we need, not just for filmmakers, but people who want to pursue time travel movies should be engaging with these ideas. Like, I think one of my top 10 like time travel moments in a movie is literally once, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character starts to age into Bruce Willis and you have the 30-year montage. I think it's such an economic amount of like great screenwriting, great like heartbreaking character motivation that really truly separates one version of him, to another version of him. And it becomes like a really heartbreaking short story in the middle of the movie that you're kind of sitting there wrestling with. And then the movie also gives the middle finger to certain like, hey, can we sit down and play with straws and talk about time travel? And they're like, no, we're not doing that. It reminded me of my dad's number one rule of doing time travel movies, where is if you're trying to explain time travel in your movie, you would have just invented time travel and you wouldn't be making movies. You would be changing the world right now. So just go have fun with time travel in your movie and say whatever you want to say. Don't get too lost in the weeds. And so Looper just has a lot of really fun ideas. It's incredibly well-paced, fun action movie that I love to death.
Rules are always like a really key element for any time travel movie, but sometimes it's not just the rules you follow, but the rules you very intentionally don't follow that can make it stand out. And I think Looper is something that's great at that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The number one rule of time travel movies: don't talk about time travel.
Fight Club had it right. That's also a time travel movie,
right?
I guess.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, my number 4, because I tried to do a bunch of different genres, so I will have some other honorable mentions that I'm sure we could argue are above here, but I wanted to pick from everywhere. I had to get About Time in here. I think the romance and time travel is one of the most beautiful aspects of it, because we get a lot of movies dealing either with Alzheimer's and dementia, and this idea of like time escaping people and memories. But I thought About Time was a very beautifully done movie in terms of how this couple is able to approach the time that they have together, the time that it escapes from them. I think that both performances are fantastic. I'm also a sucker for Time Traveler's Wife, the movie, not the show. So I'm going to have that right there as my romantic pick for my top 5 at number 4, About Time.
Nice.
I love About
a good
Time.
one.
That was also an honorable mention.
Beautiful.
So it's it's a heartbreaker. If I wanted to go do an easy cry, About Time gets me all the time. I just put it on right there and go feel the feelings.
Perfect.
Awesome. My number 4 is also a bit of a non-super sci-fi heavy, I guess, venture into time travel. I'm going to go with Midnight in Paris. I feel like there's a lot of time travel movies that are typically about different types of wish fulfillment, whether it's fixing something that was broken or acquiring some kind of superpower. Midnight in Paris, to me, feels pretty unique because it's specifically about the romanticization of eras that we didn't live through. Mm-hmm. That's something very real and really relatable, but it's also about how we often view that which we don't have through these rose-colored glasses, and I think there's something that's really like special in that idea and the way that it uses time travel to get that across. A really excellent movie and a really strange one in the general filmography of Woody Allen, who obviously is controversial for other reasons, but to me a huge standout. I really love Midnight in Paris.
Oh man, me too. Yeah,
Honorable
that one
mention.
is really, really great. It was. It reminds me. Yeah, we all have gone being like, man, '80s was the best time to go watch movies, and I bet they are like, man, '60s was the best time to go watch movies, and it just you could go down a rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very incisive and the kind of thing that you don't necessarily normally take away from a time travel story. So I thought that was pretty clever.
And Owen Wilson's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Felker, what's your number 4?
I had to do Terminator. Terminator is
One?
a Terminator 1. Terminator 1. I have 2 as an honorable mention because 2 just evolves from it, but Terminator 1 just being so like metal noir horror action time travel, and it's like one of the first movies you could really pull in a mainstream culture that really punches you in the face being like, this is a time travel movie and we're building everything around it. And that's why so many of the paramount moments in that movie just stick with you in so many different ways. You have no idea what's going to happen. And it just gives you like an anxiety about your future and where you came from all at the same time in a way I don't think time travel movies were thinking about at that time. Mm-hmm. So really giving you the true horror of what it means to travel through time and then what it means to what's going to happen to you versus what has happened to you and what is happening to you in this moment makes every type of anxiety and worry get personified into a horror. I love it.
I agree. Terminator will come up again on this list for sure.
It's a great pick. Nobody does it like Cameron. All right, Art, let's go back to you for your number 3.
I think it might be the most messed up on my list, but it's not too messed up. I remember when I first saw Predestination, and it left me so confused, confounded in every way, shape, or form that it takes. Without spoiling it too much, there is a certain time travel phrase that people say, and this took it to that degree in the most interesting and wild way. This was what am I blinking? Ethan Hawke, Sarah Snook before the Succession fame, in this intertwined thing of a time traveler who is he's trying to investigate a case, not realizing what he may actually be investigating. And I thought that this worked on so many levels. The paradoxes in this. Usually I get very frustrated because many times, and you may feel this with a lot of the writing that you see, sometimes it feels like a cop-out when it comes to sci-fi movies, but here it felt like it was leaning into it, and it felt like it was a real part of the story in terms of what the character was going through, and I loved it. I thought it's one of the most wild time travel movies that I've seen with what the reveal ends up being, and I can't recommend it enough. Predestination.
Awesome pick, dude. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Nice. With my number 3, I'm going to go with a tie. I don't normally like to put ties on the list, but it almost feels like hard to talk about one of these movies without the other because they're so closely linked. I'm going with Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes and River, a pair of 2-minute time loop movies from Japanese director Junta Yamaguchi, I believe it's pronounced, that feel like modern updates on the old school doors opening, doors closing, theatrical farce comedies. They are just so densely plotted and perfectly timed, but silly and clever. And endlessly inventive comedies that just take these kind of small situations and extrapolate all these really awesome ideas and really playful kind of Rube Goldberg machine elements to them. I just find them so fun and funny and just joyful. I can't help but be put in a good mood by that pair of movies. I was a huge fan of Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. I didn't even realize River had come out, and Art was telling me like it was a surprise release or something. So I made sure to catch up with it before we did this episode, and I loved it just as much as Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. A pair of movies that I think are just such gems.
I haven't seen River yet, but I saw it was at the festival circuit while I was traveling. I gotta go check it out.
Yeah, it's I think it's on Amazon Prime right now. I cannot recommend it enough if you enjoyed Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes.
He's like, time to go.
Well, I have like an ongoing like movies I gotta watch list, and so it's right next to my time travel movies. So definitely added River for sure, because I know my wife would love that too.
Nice. What else is on that list? I'm curious.
Oh my god. Well, we don't have 2 hours because I have basically like 100 movies, but awesome. It's stuff that's like deep dives that I'm just like, all right, or occasional blind spots. Like I'm just like, oh, why have I not seen this Bob Fosse movie? So like, exactly. I'm trying to get through all of those as well. But River is now near the top just because of the amount of great things I've heard about it.
Nice.
One of us for sure. All right, let's go back to you for number 3.
So my number 3 is probably just the one that's like, in more ways than one, the lightning rod for all time travel movies is Back to the Future. It's the one that made my dad love time travel movies. It was one of his favorite movies. It was his favorite movie for a long time, and it's one of his favorite movies in general. But just being able to just have a way where everyone in the world can buy into going back in time, trying to fix something and come back, and have it be a phenomenon is just something that can't be ignored. There's too many great moments. There's too many interesting ways. It also just kind of opened amongst our family the different types of time travel movies you can have, where it's like, all right, this is the time travel movie where you can go back in the same timeline, fix something, and it has a repercussion. And we had talked about other time travel movies where, like 12 Monkeys, where it's like, no matter what you could do, everything's already predetermined. You can't change anything.
Whatever happened,
and then, and then there's other ones where like you change something and it splits off to a whole nother thing. So this is all left behind. So it's a huge like testament. It's like the first like stone. We were like, all right, here's the time travel movie that we will branch all time travel movies off of and work from there.
I would not count Endgame as a time travel movie, but with it being the highest grossing movie of all time, the fact that they needed to use Back to the Future to describe it shows you the staple of that film.
Yes, exactly. Like we had a moment where so we don't have too many deleted scenes and things way different, but we have one deleted section where we did have, in case we needed it, we had the characters talk to each other through movies in order to describe time travel.
Interesting.
And at one point we had them be like, in order to describe what was happening in the movie, one of the characters goes like, oh, so it's kind of like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Nice.
And we cut it out because we're like, oh, we don't want to like leave people like with you have to see Bill and Ted in order to understand it. But there is a way of like, hey, sometimes a movie, in order to explain its heady concept, if they really need for the audience to understand it, point to a popular time travel movie. And Endgame smartly did that with Back to the Future.
Yeah, they become our shorthand.
Yeah, and everyone should watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure as well.
Yeah, love that movie.
Yeah, right, I talk about this with there's some classic movies, but like Breakfast Club is one that I always point at, where once you see it, you just see it in every
Everything
other movie
else.
of that genre in the future, and that's totally Back to the Future with the time travel genre.
Oh yeah,
the original recipe.
It's one of those that's just like everyone saw it, and now it's just part of just mainstream like language. Like it's just like for cinema, you're just like, oh yeah, Back to the Future, and then they can just talk about it, and everyone gets it.
Yeah,
agreed. All right, I have one that blew my mind when I saw it, because I was like, I thought I had seen every version of a time travel movie, but Timecrimes blew my mind when I caught that. I had searched everywhere. This is when Blockbusters were still around, and I remember finding a copy. I put that bad boy in, and I just want to say as little as possible, other than it being a guy who keeps seeing a bandaged individual continue to appear in his lawn, like his backyard, and just the loop of it is incredible. Timecrimes by Nacho Vigalondo. put that on your watch list if you haven't. If you're a person who thinks that they've seen every time travel movie possible, the journey that this puts you on. It's so short too. It's a ride. It's a thrill ride.
Oh yeah. I remember Timecrimes was actually another one we talked about a lot when pre-production, that I think it's like our lead actor Adam had those, like when he read our script, he was like, oh man, I use Timecrimes as my like way to kind of understand this movie. And I was like, oh yeah, Timecrimes is a must watch for everyone on our crew to kind of understand what we're doing, especially on a production scale, because that Timecrimes has so many great ideas and it just have so little to work with. So they do a lot with very little. It's an awesome movie.
Awesome. For my number 2, I am going to go with another time loop movie. I'm going to go with Palm Springs. I thought about going with Groundhog Day in this slot, but I just really find Palm Springs to be like a really delightful modern update on that idea. So irreverent and fun and packed with gags to basically maximize the comedy you can get from this situation. You have Andy Samberg and Christine Milioti, who are absolutely hysterical and just an amazing chemistry match in this film. It just brings me endless joy. It's endlessly rewatchable, and it has some clever implementation of the time loop and the effects of it. And I just find it to be a really great take on the Groundhog Day-esque caught in a moment that you have to live through for years and years and years. So yeah, Palm Springs, delightful one.
Yeah, that was my pandemic like movie. That was the movie I latched onto.
I think it was for a lot of people.
I latched onto at Hulu summer 2020. I was just like, this is the only movie that will make me feel a little sane in this situation.
Yeah.
That's a wild,
because we were all caught in our own version of it in 2020. Absolutely.
Yeah, amazing movie. So my number 2 is Primer.
Nice.
Primer is
have to.
You watch that movie the first time, you don't get it. You absolutely won't. And if you do, you're probably the one who wrote the movie. So like it's a movie that is basically 80 minutes long. 1 hour of it is a tutorial about how this time travel works. And then the last 20 minutes, they throw you into an ocean and say, all right, go swim. And it's a brave movie in terms of being like 100% time travel. You don't even have characters you latch onto. You just get lost in the situation and just have your head explore it. But it's also one of the most rewatchable because every time you rewatch it, you get a little bit more, until finally you feel like you're just in the same space as them, just getting kind of lost in these different versions of themselves, and you feel like you can track everything. And it's a movie that will drive you insane in the best ways. So Primer is a huge, like, if you want to do anything with time travel or just want to go head deep into time travel movies, sink to the bottom of the ocean and hit your head on Primer. 100%.
Yeah, agreed. I thought he solved it. That's how confused I was the first time. I was like, he got it down.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think you were saying like your dad was saying there's a rule. His rule for time travel is you shouldn't actually try to solve time travel. This feels like the exception to the rule in the best way. Like it really gets into the nitty gritty in a way that just blows your mind. It does actually feel like he's gotten to the bottom of it.
There is one movie that is the closest to doing that. I feel like Primer is the one that takes the core as close as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great pick. But Art, what do you have at number 1?
I had a couple of honorable mentions, and I'm curious to know, Michael, if you have any other ones that you wanted to mention here first before I mention some, because I also have TV. That was one thing that I brought up to Zach in case we're going to have some overlap. I was like, let me put some series on here. But any honorable mentions before we get to our number ones?
Let's see. So 12 Monkeys, honorable mention. Bill and Ted, Edge of Tomorrow, Terminator 2. Here are the other one about time are on my honorable mentions. I also had Arrival because Arrival's most emotional.
That was another one. Yeah,
we debated about this
point.
before we started recording because it is time travel like esque.
It's emotional height. Its emotional climax is a time travel moment, and you can't deny it. You can't deny Arrival, even though because most of that movie's engine is more extraterrestrial science fiction. Like, hey, how do we speak to a new alien that is speaking another language? But because of that language being so integrating into, we don't see time non-linearly, that movie ends up being a time travel movie for me, at least in a lot of ways. And that's why it's an honorable mention, just because it's not 100% a time travel movie.
Exactly. But the emotional core of it really is that element. So.
Oh, absolutely. I have a tie because they're kind of similar in this honorable mention. I put Frequency and Lake House as movies that use an object or a container to bridge time. So Frequency is a movie about how like a father and a son talk to each other through like a ham radio through time, and they affect each other in terms of trying to stop like his dad from dying in a fire that he grew up with. But then every time he changes something else gets fucked up in his time, and it's just a whack-a-mole of you can't stop time from
great movie.
meeting its ultimate fate. Lake House it's a guilty pleasure, but it's just, a love story between two people in the same house 2 years apart, where they just send each other letters through this mailbox, but they just get it in 2 different years. And it's just a great excuse to get Sandy and Keanu back in a movie together. So it's the best.
That element of the lake house also feels a little bit like things will be different with the tape recorder.
What's so funny is I've seen Lake House so many times, and then I wrote Things Will Be Different, which has like a similar conceit with a tape recorder and a safe. And I didn't think about it until someone pointed out. So it's like, oh, you made like a really primer version of the Lake House, and I went, yeah, I kind of did.
Primer version of the Lake House. That's great. Yeah,
it's crazy. Love that movie to death. I watch it every so often with my friends. And then I have 2 classics. Actually, one is less of a classic, but it's kind of like the same way Terminator 2 for Terminator. I have Back to the Future Part 2 with Back to the Future, only because even though Part 2 kind of just builds off 1, what it does in its final sequence of just like affecting the enchantment of the sea dance, but not affecting it in order to have this second story underneath, is an incredibly wonderful conceit, incredibly groundbreaking in its special effects at the time, incredibly awesome movie in that sense. And then I got Planet of the Apes.
Hell yeah.
Nice. Classic.
Enough said about that one. Those are my honorable mentions.
I got a couple honorable mentions as well that I'll throw out before we get to our number ones then. Art thankfully mentioned Source Code and Edge of Tomorrow, and Felker got to Looper, so I didn't have to bring him up, but I will anyway. Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Hilarious.
Of course.
Why not?
Of course. I can't believe I didn't think of that
one. Maybe the funniest movie on this list, but a great one.
I just sent my brother and I'm sure it's from that movie where he gets stuck in the little cart. I think that's
so do the 100-point K-turn or whatever.
So the fact that I just quoted that yesterday, it counts.
That one, those 2 are definitely on my honorable mentions now, and just typed them in. It's great. I can't believe I forgot those.
Absolutely deserve to be there. It's in a similar, just sort of like Lost in Time vein, even though I don't know if this movie holds up at all, but at a point in time was special to me. A Kid in King Arthur's Court. Like that was a great time travel movie. I haven't seen it in maybe 30 years. No, probably less, but I got Idiocracy on here, Arrival, Interstellar. Tenet, were you going to bring up Art?
I was.
Sort of is a traveling through time movie.
For sure.
You'll take it? Yeah. You'll accept it?
I mean, he ordered his hot sauce a while ago, so.
An hour ago. I put Safety Not Guaranteed on here as well. And then, I don't know how this movie holds up, but I really loved it at 1314, The Butterfly Effect. the foremost work of Ashton Kutcher.
I haven't seen that since I was 13, 14 either, so not sure. It holds up.
I can see that for sure. Yeah.
But yeah. Art, any more?
Yeah, a couple of others. Alina, my partner, did have The Lake House as her top 3. She had Prisoner of Azkaban, which she reminded, which I was like, that's right. Cuarón comes in and just like does some crazy stuff in there. But some of the other picks would have been Your Name is an anime dealing with not just time travel, but body swapping as well. And I know that they've been working on making a live action version of that, so that's definitely going to be in the sphere out there. Zach had mentioned a throwback from way back in the day, I think, dealing with medieval times. I don't know if y'all have ever seen Martin Lawrence time traveling back to medieval times in The Black Knight.
Yes. Great pick.
I loved that movie back in the day. I have not seen it in a while, so I I need to go rent it.
Yeah, but I probably haven't seen it since it first came out on VHS.
And then just in terms of TV shows, Dark has been one of, I think, the most interesting ones. And I remember when I had started my channel, I hadn't even reviewed it yet. And Netflix somehow got me the book, and they sent it to me. And I found it the other day at the store because I was wondering, I was like, how did Netflix know I guess when I signed up for Netflix, but how did they know my address? They never reached out. I just got this in the mail. And I started wondering, maybe I sent this to me at some point in the future. So we'll see. We'll see how that works. It's still a story in the works, but Dark in its 3 seasons has been, to me, one of the most quintessential time travel stories. Lost is one of my favorite series of all time, and Russian Doll, which just wrapped up last year, I think was a really good take on the waking up Groundhog Day type mentality, and Natasha Lyonne is fantastic in it. So those would be my honorable mentions leading up to my number one. It's a part 2. It was already mentioned. Terminator Judgment Day, the score, the performances, the idea of taking who is the bad guy and now is the person saving the kid. I love it. I love it. I love it. Terminator popping up. Zach, you're going to have to do a tie for number 1.
Those are great picks, man. I wrote down all of these honorable mentions, by the way, because I agree with most of them and just forgot to put them on there. Agree with the TV list completely, especially Lost. Definitely one of the best examples of time travel in any medium.
Whatever happens, happens.
Yep, and then especially the Constant episode. My God, the Constant episode. You just tear up even thinking about it. I even pull up those moments.
I'm going through a Lost rewatch with my girlfriend who has never seen it before, and I'm just like counting the episodes until we can get to the Constant. Yeah, Caitlin's never seen it.
She see Charlie's boat yet?
No, she doesn't. No, it's not Betty's boat. And thankfully, she's not in the room, so she won't hear this.
All right, we'll keep it on the down low.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, and then Terminator 2 is so good, incredibly awesome. I can't believe it's a radar blockbuster that kids got to go see because even their parents were like, "You got to go see this crazy movie that changed the way time travel and VFX and everything works." It's such a brilliant idea to have this incredible villain that has built up a decade of reputation only to then have it be a buddy road trip
right
partner. That is you break your heart when he goes at the end of the movie. Brilliant movie
Yeah, so I got Terminator 2 as my top.
Cameron, our king of blockbuster sequels, it feels like. It's so good. All right, my number 1, I'm going to go with Donnie Darko. To me, I feel like teenage angst is the perfect match for the kind of like fatalistic time travel storytelling that's in this movie. I was always a little less drawn to the time travel elements and more just like the general mood that it creates, the mixture of like darkly mocking and like ominous foreboding. It feels like it really mirrors the outlook of a depressed teenager in a way that is perfect in a sort of cringe-inducing but really true way. Just a really cool story, like so many iconic ideas and visuals and lines, and just the ticking clock that the movie gives you as well. Like it just feels so looming over it. I love that movie so much. It is a really important part of my falling in love with film, and I got to put it at the top of this list.
Donnie Darko is so great, man. I haven't seen it since about a decade, so I'm really eager to see it again. I actually just got weirdly more into the Southland Tales part of the filmography, but I am overdue because I love Donnie Darko then, and I'm sure I'm going to even love it even more now.
Right? It's one of those,
older, working with time. For sure. So great pick. Yeah.
I started with Jake at my number 5, and then you ended it with Jake at your number 1.
Exactly. Brought it full circle or looped it around or so whatever you want to talk about.
Yep. Yeah. Speaking of loop, so my number 1 movie is a time loop movie. It's got to be Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day is a movie that my dad described it as the ultimate, for him, 7 out of 10 movie. Because the first time he saw it, he was like, "That's 7 out of 10." But then he watches it for the next 20 years straight, and he's like, "It'll never not be lower than a 7 out of 10." As movies that he thinks are a 10 out of 10, and then he rewatches them, they become like a 5 out of 10 or whatever. Groundhog Day will just stick in your brain. It is the ultimate time travel movie that embodies like the capacity for human change and and like realizing like how like a bad person you could be, or seeing your flaws and having the day be a mirror to you, and how you could still change things about you, even though you can't change anything about anything around you in the world. Not to mention, it's still one of the funniest movies ever made. I quote Ned Ryerson all the time. Like it's it's a movie that I watch once a year, regardless whether it's actually Groundhog Day or not. And I showed it to my wife for the first time like a few years ago because she'd never seen it, and she went like, "Wow, that's one of the best movies I've ever seen." And you can have that probably be said for the rest of time as long as that movie exists. It's a brilliant movie.
That's another one like Back to the Future. That's like the core. It's the source code for Russian Doll. Zach had mentioned Palm Springs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
Yeah, just a scene by scene, like perfect comedy. It's so funny. Bill Murray is just at his peak in this movie. It's again one of those movies that's like a stone cold classic for a reason. It's so eminently rewatchable, even if it doesn't necessarily strike you on that first viewing as being, like the greatest movie I've ever seen. It doesn't get really old at any point.
Yeah, absolutely. You could write essays and pick about that, what everything works and why he's a weatherman and how fascinating that is. Like, you can't predict the weather, you can't control it, and it's one of those. It's just a movie that is an endless trove of feel good moments and things to change the way you look at life. And that's what great movies do. They make you walk out of the room and go like, yeah, everything's a little different now, and I kind of like that.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
Like your movie. Things will be different. Coming out October 4th.
Hey.
Yeah, you'll come out of my movie confused as fuck and wondering why you watched that in the first place. But yes, Things Will Be Different in theaters on demand October 4th. You can already pre-order it now. Things Will Be Different movie.com, or go to the Magnolia Magnet website to pre-order it on Amazon, Apple, or your favorite on-demand streamer.
Nice.
Yeah, if you're a fan of time travel movies, you absolutely should do that. If you're a fan of just sci-fi or gritty crime dramas in general, or stories about siblings, we definitely recommend it. We really, really enjoyed Things Will Be Different. Really, such a pleasure to talk about that movie, about our favorite time travel movies. Pretty awesome that we were able to each do completely independent top fives. We got 15 recommendations plus the honorable mentions here. Great list.
It's so cool.
Yeah. Great how that all worked out, as if somebody came from the future to guide this for us. But yeah,
I'm actually 50 years old. I'm from 2030, 2040. I just came to do this podcast, and I'm going to go back to my time. So thanks for having me, guys. This was awesome.